The sun hung low in the sky, casting a golden hue over the quiet village of Akinbo. Smoke coiled lazily from the thatched roofs as women pounded yam in mortar and pestle, their rhythmic pounding blending with the distant laughter of children playing by the river. It was a village where traditions ran deep, where the whisper of ancestors was carried in the wind, and where certain lines were never meant to be crossed. Ruth knew this well. She had spent her entire life within the four walls of her father's compound, raised under the strict watch of Pastor Isaiah, the village's most respected clergyman. His church, the Glorious Path Ministry, stood proudly at the heart of Akinbo, a whitewashed building with a large wooden cross that towered over the mud brick houses. To the villagers, Pastor Isaiah was not just a preacher, but a beacon of morality and discipline. And Ruth, she was the embodiment of everything a pastor's daughter should be: graceful, obedient, and devoted to the faith. But there was something else, a fire in her heart, a longing she couldn't name. It had a name now, Fagbemi. She met him by chance, or so she told herself. The first time their eyes locked, she had been returning from the stream, balancing a clay pot on her head. He had been seated beneath the giant Iroko tree, a book in his hand, his brows furrowed in deep thought. The son of Baba Ogunleye, the feared Herbalist, was not like other village boys. He spoke with confidence, his voice carrying the wisdom of books and places Ruth had only dreamed of. "Good afternoon, Ruth," he had greeted her that day. She had only nodded, heart hammering, and she hurried past, but the seed had been planted. Now, weeks later, she found herself lingering near the tree more often. Her walks to the stream conveniently timed to cross the path with him, and each time they talked a little longer. "You love books?" she had asked him one evening, eyes darting to the pages in his hand. "Yes, they take me to places I may never see. I wish I could read more. My father says too much learning is dangerous for women." Fagbemi had smiled, then a slow, knowing smile. "Knowledge is never dangerous, Ruth. Only ignorance is." That night, she laid awake, his word echoing in her mind. It was dangerous what she was doing, talking to the son of a man her father called a vessel of darkness. Baba Ogunleye's trade as a herbalist had long put him at odds with the church. The pastor preached against him in every sermon, calling his herbal remedies fetish practices, and warning the villagers against seeking help from him. But Fagbemi was not his father. He was different, educated, ambitious. He had left the village for school in the city and returned with dreams of change. He wanted to bring modern medicine to Akinbo, to build a clinic where people could get real treatment instead of relying solely on herbs and prayer. "How can a man of God hate someone who wants to help?" Ruth asked one evening, frustration lacing her voice. "Fear," Fagbemi had replied simply. "Fear of what he doesn't understand." And so the day passed, their conversations growing longer, their hearts drawing closer. She had never known love before, not like this, like a river carving through stone, persistent and unstoppable. But love, in a village bound by old tradition and deep faith, was never without consequences. That night, as Ruth crept back into her father's compound, she did not see the shadow lurking by the gate. She did not hear the sharp intake of breath as her elder brother David watched her sleep inside. She did not know that her secret was no longer hers alone. Ruth awoke to the familiar sounds of morning in Akinbo, roosters crowing, women chatting as they swept their compounds, and the distant singing of early worshippers at the father's church. She sat up, stretching, but something fell off. A heaviness lingered in the air, like the stillness before a storm. She quickly dressed and stepped outside, expecting the usual warmth of a new day. Instead, she was met with her brother's cold stare. David stood by the doorway, arms crossed over his broad chest, his expression unreadable. "Where were you last night?" His voice was calm, too calm. Ruth's heart skipped a beat. I was at the stream. At the hour, his eyes narrowed. "Or Were you with him? Her breath caught in her throat. He knew. David was not just her older brother. He was their father's right hand, the one who would take over the church someday. He had been raised on the same strict doctrine, molded into a man who saw the world in black and white. Do you know what you are doing? He demanded. Do you know what father will say when he hears that his only daughter is sneaking around with the son of an idol worshipper? Ruth bristled. Baba Ogunleye is not an idol worshipper. He is a healer. David's expression darkened. He is a herbalist, a man who deals in charms and potions, leading people away from God. And now, his son had lured you into sin. It is not a sin to talk to someone, David, she said, her voice shaking. It is when that person is leading you astray. He turned abruptly and walked away. Ruth's stomach twisted. Will he tell their father? The answer came sooner than expected. That evening, Pastor Isaiah summoned her to the parlor. He sat in his usual chair, Bible in hand, his face graved. David stood behind him and arms folded. Their mother, Mama Ruth, was seated as well, worry etched into her features. Ruth, her father began, his deep voice steady. Your brother tells me you have been seen with the son of Baba Ogunleye. Is this true? She hesitated, but lying would only make things worse. Yes, father. A heavy silence fell over the room. Her mother sighed and shook her head. David looked triumphant. Pastor Isaiah's gaze bored into her. Do you not know what the family stands for? Fagbemi is not his father, Ruth said firmly. He is educated. He wants to help the village. Her father slammed his Bible onto the table, making her flinch. Do not be deceived. The son of darkness cannot bring light. Ruth's throat tightened. Then why does he speak of kindness, of knowledge, of healing? Is that darkness? Pastor Isaiah leaned forward. The devil is cunning, my daughter. He disguised his work as good to trap the weak. She clenched her feet. Then, am I weak? Her father's expression softened slightly, but his voice remained firm. You are young, naive. That is why we, your family, must protect you. He exhaled slowly. From this day, you will not speak to him again. Ruth's heart pounded. Father, this is not up for discussion, he interrupted. You will focus on things of God, not on a boy who belongs to a family of sorcerers. Her lips trembled. I love him. A sharp gasp came from her mother. David coughed, but it was her father's reaction that struck her the most. He simply closed his eyes, as though it's deep prayer, before opening them again. You do not know what love is, Ruth. His voice was low, but heavy with finality. And I will not watch my daughter walk into destruction. He rose to his feet. From tomorrow, you will no longer fetch water alone. Your mother will go with you. And if I hear of you speaking to that boy again, you will face consequences. Tears burned in Ruth's eyes, but she knew there was no use arguing. Her father had spoken. She lowered her gaze. Yes, father. As she left the parlor, she felt David's satisfied stare on her back. She wanted to scream, to cry, to run. Instead, she walked to her room and shut the door, pressing a hand to her chest. Love was not supposed to feel like this.